Hey guys, this is Joshua Gibson with the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast. This is episode 27, and today I'm joined by Matt Bruce. Matt, how are you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah, no problem. So Matt's an Olympic weightlifting national champion. He was a member of multiple junior and senior world teams. He was produced by one of the best coaches in the country, Gayle Hatch. Bruce also has an education in the field of kinesiology with a master's degree, and just some of his best lifts to date. And Matt, you may have to correct me on these, but it's a 152 kilo snatch and then 192 kilo clean and jerk at 85.
Correct. Yeah, those are my all-time PRs.
Okay.
I did better as a 77. I snatched 148 and clean and jerked 185.
Okay.
So pound for pound, that would be better. But as far as max numbers, yeah, it was as an 85.
Okay, so I have a couple questions just off of that, but I'd be interested in starting this podcast off by kind of getting your background. So when you were younger, how you kind of came up, and were you directly involved with weightlifting as your first sport, or did you play multiple sports, and then kind of from that point to where you are now?
Yeah, so I went to a local high school called Catholic High here in Baton Rouge. And I was selected to be part of their 8th grade class. And this class of 8th graders, they only accepted 20 of us. And you have to basically be a dork to get in, right? So I'm in this class of these nerds, and we would all go do PE together. And one day in PE, and I'd never really played sports in my life. I did some baseball stuff, or, I can cut backflips and, I like stuff like that. But in PE, the PE teacher, we were doing like a weightlifting day, and he noticed that I was pretty strong. And he said, hey, he's like, have you ever thought about playing football? And I said, no, never played in my life. He's like, okay, well, I'm going to send you to this guy. His name's Gayle Hatch, and he's going to get you stronger and better so that next year you'll be ahead of all the incoming freshmen because you've already started weightlifting and you can play football for us. I said, sure. Didn't know what I was doing. Meanwhile, imagine I'm not even 5 foot yet. I think I'm 4'11", and not even 100 pounds. So I show up at Coach Hatch's gym, and I go in there and I introduce myself. And he's like, "Well, who sent you here?" Well, it was a football coach that sent me, but I didn't know who the football coach was. So I told him it was the basketball coach that sent me over there. And so Hatch, who played professional basketball. Now, Hatch is a 6'7" guy, played in the ABA. And he looks at me, he said, son, you play basketball? And I said, yes, sir. He's like, are you sure it was a basketball coach? I was like, yeah, he's the one that sent me. And I was on the 8th grade team for Catholic. So imagine we didn't win a single game the whole year. We were the worst team ever. But I was technically on the basketball team for Catholic. So he's like, so are you on the Catholic team? I was like, yes, I'm on the Catholic High basketball team. He's like, just flabbergasted. He's like, man, you must have some crazy hops and shooting abilities. I was like, no, I scored 4 points the whole season. Like literally 4 points the whole season. And then he's just dumbfounded of what I'm doing at his gym. He's like, okay. He's like, I'll train you. And I was like, okay. And then 6 weeks go by, and he pulls me aside, and he pulls me in the office, and he said, son, he's like, are you sure you want to play basketball or football? I said, no, coach. I was like, never really played in my life. I'm not that too interested in it. And he looked at me, he said, you know what? He's like, I can make you into an Olympian. He's like, you just have to dedicate your life to me. So at this point, within 6 weeks, he already picked out the factors that he knew to make me into an Olympian. And I went the next day to the football coach and told him that Coach Hatch wants me to train full-time in weightlifting and not play football. And that coach already knew it was up. He said, yeah, he's like, good luck, brother. He's like, you're going to do great. And that was it. I trained under Coach Hatch for 17 years, made 7 world teams. I was the Olympic team alternate a couple of years. So the rest is history.
So my question would be, I don't know if you knew what he was looking for, but what do you look for in a younger athlete to tell if they have potential to be a great weightlifter?
First of all, you can tell by how an athlete picks up a bar with the minimum amount of cues that you give them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can they set their back in an arch position? Does it look like supernatural for them? If they're doing squat cleans the first day and it looks almost picture perfect and they're getting full depth on squat and they're shifting their feet aggressively, like I can see that instantly by the way that athlete's moving, but also their build, right? Weightlifters will typically have a certain build to them. The Gayle Hatch lifters in particular were he chose us to be kind of like short and squatty, powerful, strong legs. So that's kind of the things I'm also looking for. Some strength conditioning standards. I would say the best one would probably be a broad jump and then landing into a squat position at the end of that broad jump. I would say would be the biggest predictor of how good they would be as an Olympic weightlifter.
Okay. So the program under Hatch, you trained with him for a very long time. So can you kind of explain what it was like when you started and how it progressed, and maybe like a few of the points that make it unique to Gayle Hatch?
Sure. So the first 3 years of my career, we really didn't max out. Mm-hmm. Everything we did was based off of benchmarks. So he wouldn't let me go for a new quote unquote record on jerk. All of our records were sets of 3s or 5s on jerks. So whenever I could do a set of 3 efficiently, I was allowed to go for a new record on jerk, which was going to be a new set of 3. Mm-hmm. And that was just a precedent he set. When we'd go to meets, we would taper a little bit. We'd start doing some doubles and singles just to see where we were. But the whole program was based off of these triples and 5s, sets of 8 on squats, and such. And people would come in and ask us, how much can you jerk? If you go in and ask any of the kids from 12 to 15, how much do you jerk? They'll immediately and quickly answer to you, my best set of 3 is this. Mm-hmm. Because he created a culture in a gym that's what we were arguing over. Who had the best triple, who had the best set of 5, not over who can clean and jerk the most for a single. So your first years are based around that. Your next years, transition years where you're really starting to build, becoming like a junior and developing into your junior phases, you're still doing a lot of volume, a lot of reps, and he's just starting to pound on the volume, right? And he's adding in a bunch of exercises that are non-traditional as far as like outside of like a Bulgarian training system, like front squats, back squats, or front squats, cleans, jerks, snatches, pulls. He would start doing, SATs presses and what we call torture rack or jerk recoveries, or pulling from blocks or pulling from deficits, a bunch of positional work, a bunch of additional accessory work like bench press, incline, leg curls, even calf raises, pull-ups, doing a bunch of these kind of like beach style kind of workouts. So we would do a lot of that. And then towards the end of our career, the last third of our career, the volume decreases tremendously because the foundation is there. And now he's just really trying to tweak the little things here and there to continue your development. Taking out some of the assistant exercises, auxiliary exercises that may have handicapped us before. So for example, when it was days to do our bench press, he would just say, okay, guys, go do your bench press. Well, it turns out that, I was 77 kilos and I was benching 350 for a triple.
Jeez.
But he never even knew that because he'd never go to that side of the gym and go watch me bench press. Well, then for years, my jerk was really far out front and I'm just holding it out and like pressing out a ton of weights and getting called for it. And then one day he asked me, he's like, son, how much are you benching on Tuesdays? And I told him, he's like, oh, that was the last thing I benched through the rest of my career. And then stopping that, it opened up my chest a lot more, gave me that more flexibility. We started doing a lot more upper back work, and that allowed I had much less lockout problems because I wasn't holding it like a bench press on the jerk.
So when you're programming for an athlete or writing a program, do you have any aspects of your programming that are different from what Gayle would typically prescribe for you? Like, have you changed your system up based on things that you've noticed?
The overall structure, no. Mm-hmm. The Hatch system is actually a pretty simple system when it comes down to like the nuts and bolts and the numbers and the percents of it. So from that side of the game, no. I have added a lot more like unilateral work and auxiliary exercises that I feel like are important and such, but the basic structure has stayed the same. The true mystery or the true part of the Hatch system that people don't understand that takes so long to learn is the coaching side of the game that he teaches, and he doesn't teach it directly. It's something that you pick up over time with him, and that's what makes the Hatch system so successful. Is that every single one of his athletes were ready to ride or die and say that his program was the best program in the world, and I would argue to the death that saying that nobody's program was better than Gayle Hatch's, and is that a true statement? At the time I believed it, but it turns out like, no, other people were doing other programs that actually worked. Mm-hmm. But what he did was he convinced us 100% that his program was the best. And having that 100% buy-in is what makes the program so successful.
So I know that Hatch is pretty much synonymous with big squatters. Like he just tends to produce squatters. So what about the squats was different from what most people do, or were there any really differences? Could you kind of explain like the squatting protocol?
For sure. Starting off, this would blow people's minds too. Like we would only squat at the end of my career when, towards the end where I was on top of the world, like people would ask me, man, how are y'all legs so strong? They'd ask me what I'd squat and I'd tell them, and like, There's a point on the world team where I was the strongest squatter, and I was squatting, besides for Casey Bergner, who was our super heavyweight, and I was squatting basically the same as him. And people couldn't understand that. They'd ask me, how often are y'all squatting a week? And I would tell them once a week. And they thought I was lying to them. I'm like, no, we front and back squat once a week, and we do it on the day. What they didn't ask me was when I was 12, 13, 14, 16, 18, how many times did I squat per week and how much emphasis was built on building our squat. We were squatting 2 to 3 times a week and doing fronts and backs on the same day on those days. So it arguably pound for pound, my best squats ever was when I was like 18 years old, because his plan was to build this stupid foundational strength, especially in the legs, that would develop into transitioning into the lift later.
So did you perform like the back squat at the end of the workout and the front squat at the start of the workout, or were they back to back?
Back to back. Yep. Yeah. One week you would start with front squats. The next week you would start with back squats, and we were doing sets. We would do like 5 sets of each over 70% of our max for multiple reps. So on our squat days, it would take me sometimes an hour and a half to 2 hours to finish up all the squatting that we'd have to do, just because it would take so long to warm up to the weights we needed to warm up to. And then plus you're doing both on the same day.
So I'm just curious, what were your best back and front squat?
Front squat, I did 230 for a triple. And back squat, I did 275 for a triple.
Okay. So knowing that he tends to produce athletes with very strong legs, do you have a certain like technical style that you use that would kind of exploit that? So like if you had somebody that came to you to learn technique, how would you go about teaching it?
No, just your basic things that everybody holds true. Nothing particularly in particular the way he taught the squat. Mm-hmm. He taught it to be as natural as possible with your feet shoulder width apart, toes slightly pointed out. But he was never cueing us to like drive our knees out or push your butt back. He never cued any of that. It would just come naturally. But also through the volume of being 12 to 13 to 14 years old, to where this was the first time I ever squatted was with him. So he had a raw athlete teaching us, teaching us from the beginning, which helped tremendously.
Okay, so if do you do any like in-person training with weightlifters?
Correct. Yes, I have a gym.
Okay, so if you get an athlete that wants to learn to snatch and clean and jerk, how would you go about developing their technique in the lifts?
So we teach a holistic approach. The first day an athlete walks in, I'm trying to teach them to do a full clean and even possibly a full snatch the first day that they come in. So, but it's kind of like an assessment period for me, because it depends on how far they can get through the workout, and then that's where we stop. And I'll only have them for like an hour and a half total. But we would start them with the back squat, and I'd see if they could perform a back squat correctly, right? And we do a couple sets on back squat. Then I teach them the front squat, see if they can do front squat correctly. If they can, it looks pretty good. Then I'll move on to a clean grip pull. Then I teach them the power clean. Then I teach them a power clean plus a front squat, and then the full clean. Then a snatch grip pull, then power snatch, then overhead squat, then power snatch plus overhead squat, then a full snatch. There's some athletes that can get it all in one day. So ideally, that's a winner that I got an athlete full snatching in one day. Then from that, keep in mind what we talked about earlier in the conversation is that everything was on benchmarks. So none of my athletes are ever maxing on these lifts. So they're doing 5 or 6 sets of 5, say, on a day. That's a lot of reps. And the body, if you do that for enough years, the body, starts figuring out the right technique, right? Because you're limiting maximal attempts. So that's how we really develop their technique, is through those benchmarks. And until they can do a set of 3 or a set of 5 with great technique, I'm not talking about the first 2 are okay, and then the third one was like, I don't tell them they're allowed to go up. They're going to try that again. If they can do it again and make all 3 reps look really good, then I'll allow them to go to a new 3 rep max.
Okay, so do you notice any flaws in technique that are really consistent from person to person that come in the gym? And then how do you go about correcting those flaws?
Yes, pretty loaded question. There's some of that are flexibility issues that are very common, that are anatomical issues a lot of times. Of course, like one is going to be the wrist mobility, or it could be their forearm is longer naturally, so it's harder for them to get in a good front rack position. So what we'll do for that is we're stretching that wrist daily when they're coming into the gym, but we're also, say if they can't even get to a front squat, or it hurts them so much to even get to that front squat, we'll take a pair of loop straps and loop them around the bar, and then have the athlete put their hand into the strap. So they're still getting into this front squat rack position, but their hands aren't on the bar. They're a little bit higher inside of the straps. We see another issue is ankle flexibility, right? And we'll see that in the squat. When they're squatting down, they just don't have the flexibility there yet, and that's extremely common. So what we'll do with all those athletes, all those kids, we'll make them sit in the squat for like a total of like 5 minutes to begin with. And however long it takes them to accumulate that 5 minutes, that's what it takes them, right? Some athletes can sit in there 5 minutes in one go and are good to go. Other athletes, it takes them, 30, different, sets of 10 or whatever it is, like to get it done. But those are 2 anatomical problems we get a lot. For his technique problems, it kind of just varies. One that brings to mind is when they're jerking, their back foot just turns slightly out instead of being straight ahead. So I might cue them to do some lunges before around the gym, just to get that body awareness, and then get them to come back and at least know what that feels like. But it's kind of the gambit of things. There's so many things that those athletes come in that you have to, on the fly fix them.
Okay. And kind of just going back to your competitive career, I would like to kind of discuss maybe what your favorite accomplishment was. So if you could kind of explain that and then kind of go into it a little bit.
I would say my favorite accomplishment was winning the 2011 American Open and best lifter at the American Open in 2011. I had basically known by this point that this was my last year competing. Next year, 2012, was going to be my last year. So I was kind of prepared for that. And I went into the American Open with that being the one tournament or one major national event or team that I never got. I never won, because a lot of times I would skip the American Open because the World Championships were in November, or too close, for me to have to come back to another competition. So I always kind of wanted that under my belt. And so going there and winning that, beating out Kendrick Ferris, and then also Donnie Schenkel for best lifter at the American Open that year, probably one of the biggest memories, because that was the one thing I didn't do, and I always kind of said I wanted to do.
Okay, so when did you make the transition from 77 to 85?
That was after the 2008 Olympic trials. Okay. I was having a hard time staying down as a 77. It was getting kind of miserable for me. And I was basically around the same numbers for about a year to 2 years. And I knew, in weightlifting, it's a quadrant sport, right? So it's every 4 years. And I knew I had to make that decision at that point. Do I want to stay as a 77 for 4 more years? Or do I want to move up and get a full 4 years of filling out this weight class as an 85? So I felt also for my mental state to keep me motivated, I felt like that was the good move for me. And within 8 to 9 months, I was already cutting weight as an 85. Mm-hmm. Just because I was holding myself back subconsciously as a 77. By the choices of food I would make and just my daily habits, I was able to move up that quickly and still stay at the same percent body fat.
So your body must have responded really well to the change if you were putting on a lot more muscle mass. Did you change your training at all to do that, or was it just kind of a natural thing?
No, it's pretty natural.
Yeah.
Yeah, my body was craving it for a while, and I finally let it go.
Yeah. So do you have any, I know this might be a tough question to pick one up. Do you have any regrets as far as your competitive career goes, with something you wish you would have done differently, or maybe a choice you would have made earlier on?
No.
Yeah?
Yeah, I can proudly say that I walked away from the sport with no regrets. You train in the sport to make that Olympic team, right? And do I feel like I gave it everything I had under those circumstances? 100%. I kept telling myself throughout my whole career, because I wanted to say I want to go through this with no regrets, no regrets, no regrets. So I felt like I always tried to do the things the way I wanted to do them, to where the day I walked away from the sport, I had absolutely, positively no regrets and never thought about coming back to the sport, because I felt like I had done what I needed to do.
So do you have any goals or anything in mind as a coach that you would like to accomplish within the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Yeah, as a coach for weightlifting, I definitely would like to become a senior international coach, mm-hmm. By developing my own athletes at my gym to a level to where that would qualify me to that level of coaches. But then on the CrossFit side, I would like to, without a doubt, have one of our athletes win the CrossFit Games in the individual category. We had our team win last year, so we've already won the team, so we got that one out the way. And I think we have a girl this year that's going to be really tough to beat as an individual for females in CrossFit. Cara Sanders, who used to be Cara Webb. She's now on our team. I'm coaching her, and I truly believe she's going to win individual this year.
Okay, so I kind of touched on it when I was giving the background. You have a master's in kinesiology from LSU. I'm kind of interested in hearing how that influenced the way you approached training and approached coaching, kind of having a formal background in the sciences.
So when I was going through all my training with Coach Hatch, he preferred us to be kind of dumb when it came to the physiological stuff. So I would go to seminars with him and I would demonstrate, and I would always hear the same things and hear him talking. But then when I went and studied in school, I took it upon myself to try to compare everything Hatch did and what did it compare to what they say in physiology, right? Mm-hmm. And that's when I got to truly understand the quote unquote Hatch method from a physiological standpoint and why it actually works from that standpoint. So I guess that's when I actually started piecing it together and saying, oh, that's why we do this way, right? Oh, it's this energy system, that he's doing this for. Like, so it kind of helped me bring it all together, so that now as a coach, so a lot of athletes spend their careers with their coaches and then they want to walk away and become a coach, right? And they think because they have all these accolades as a athlete, they instantly become a great coach. And a lot of them, what they do is just repeat the exact same systems that they were on, right? But not necessarily knowing why they did those things. So I still keep the Hatch method and repeat a lot of what Hatch has taught me, but I've challenged myself to know the why behind all that training, so that I can make those adjustments. And like I said earlier, he trains you how to be a coach. And being a coach is knowing when to push your athletes, when to pull back, when to add in certain assistant exercises, when their central nervous system is fatigued, and when it's because like they lost their dog is why their training is bad. Those are the things that are rooted in physiology that you have to learn as a coach, so you can make those daily adjustments, or as my coach would always say, stay in the eye of the storm, to make those adjustments for those athletes.
Okay. So do you have any particular resources, I don't know, like books or mentors that you would kind of recommend to our listeners that want to learn more about the process of training and the whys behind it?
Good question. Of course, Gayle Hatch would be my number one resource. That goes without question. I feel Catalyst Athletics does a extremely good job with the information that they put out. I think that's a great resource. They have a book. I think Bob Takano has a lot of great resources and is a great coach, fundamentally based in physiology. Let me think. Those are the two that come off the top of my head that I know and trust a lot, and the information that they put out.
Have you ever thought about coming out with maybe like a book or some kind of resource for weightlifters or like strength athletes or crossfitters?
Yeah, I think about it a lot, but that's just not where my motivation lies right now. I think about it, but my motivation is just not there to sit down and put it all together.
Sure. And kind of along that same vein with athletes looking to expand their understanding of the sport, I'm kind of curious to hear like what kind of advice you would get to a weightlifter that is maybe about to qualify for a national meet or just qualified. What would you say that maybe they can do or continue to do to help them progress to the next level and, potentially medal at those meets?
Number one, the biggest thing is consistency in your training. You have to become ritualistic in your training. You need to go to the gym at the same time every day. You need to set up for your lifts the exact same every day. You need to put a towel over your head before your lifts. Like whatever your rituals are, become consistent and ritualistic in those, so that when you show up for that day of competition, you can turn to those rituals and it'll bring you back into that happy place of being in your gym, right? So consistency at the gym is by far the most important. And it's not only consistency in your lifts, it's more importantly consistency in the way you train. Like I said, just becoming ritualistic, the way you chalk your hands, the way you take breaths before you lift the bar, the way you set up. You want that to be, whether you're taking 40 kilos at the gym, 60 kilos, 80 kilos, every single set on your way up needs to be that exact same progression that you take, so that when you step on the platform at a national meet, I'm not going to say you don't get nervous, but here's the thing. Now your body can use those nerves for good. Your body can use that extra adrenaline to help you, because your body's in autopilot and you're just letting it kind of go at its own, because you've done it for so many thousands and thousands of reps before this in the exact same manner. That's the fun part. You're literally taking the weight for a ride. You don't have to overthink it. Your body knows what to do, and you just let yourself go.
So did you have any rituals that you kind of used during a competition to help you feel more comfortable?
Absolutely. One thing was my coach would call it the zombie walk. The moment I would chalk up, I would literally like basically zone out. And I would walk, it would almost take me like 20 to 30 seconds to walk up to the bar because my eyes were almost closed. And like, you would imagine my heart rate was probably less than what it would normally be on a resting heart rate, only because that's how I would get zoned out. I would literally be zoned out lifting the bar. So yeah, one big thing was the zombie walk. And then other than that, like Coach Hatch did not want us to be flashy or showboat or even celebrate or anything. We were there to do a task. We were there trained to do this one thing, do it and get off the platform, and you can celebrate later. But you be respectful on a platform. Even his kids weightlifting at local meets, the judge doesn't even have to tell him something. If he sees a kid walking out with his shirt untucked, Coach Hatch grabs the kid, makes them tuck their shirt in, because it was a lot about discipline and the way we presented ourselves on the platform to carry on the legacy that he had started.
So do you kind of pass on that same feeling and that same approach to the competitions of your athletes now, is keeping that kind of business-like approach to competing and training?
Yes and no. As far as like celebrations, I'll let them celebrate a little bit. When it comes, example would be Brooke Entz at the CrossFit Games a couple of years ago when she won the snatch and the clean and jerk events. She did a little dance and did one of those little Degeneration X's. That didn't bother me, But if you look at her setup, the way she approached the bar, how ritualistic she was basically zoned out. That's what I wanted, and that's what I got from her. So I guess you can say I allow a little bit more celebration, but everything else before that, their concentration has to be in that zoned out kind of period, and not this jumping around, hyping yourself up, screaming, slapping yourself in the face, snorting like, what do they call it? Like ammonia packs or whatever. None of that. No, that has to come intrinsically. You shouldn't need any external motivation, because that should be everything inside of you getting you motivated, because this is what you wanted to do. I don't need to slap you on your butt or slap your legs or slap your face to get you to get to that zone. Mm-hmm. Because of the way we practice at the gym, you should be able to get to that zone on your own. If not, then I didn't do my job as a coach on a day-to-day basis to get you there.
Right, and you were at a lot of major competitions that I'm sure easily can get you so aroused to the point of like not needing any sort of hype. Do you have any interesting stories, maybe from the back room or any of the competitions you were at that you feel kind of stick out?
I remember a few of the competitions where I would really thrive looking at my competitors and seeing them being scared. Mm. I would look across the room at Chad Vaughn or Kendrick, and I can see that I'll see them maybe hit a weight, but it didn't look that good in the back room. And like you see the look on their face, like, oh shit, like, am I ready? Like that would drive me. I'd be like, yeah, let's go. Like I'm ready. Are these guys ready? Like, and I would sit in the back and I would literally just watch them, not like staring them down, but just watching them, trying to find a kink in their armor to let me know that they weren't perfect, that they were afraid. And once I saw that glimpse of that moment of them being afraid, that motivated me to say, they are beatable. They're not perfect. I can win this. And that would really motivate me to go out there.
Did you have any kind of experiences being on the opposite side of that, where maybe your warm-ups weren't going very well and maybe you missed a couple? How did you maybe flip the switch to go out on the platform and still make attempts?
Yeah, just having a good coach like Coach Hatch. Mm-hmm. And I found out later that I would miss lifts in the back, and in his head he's thinking, oh fuck. but when he'd come to me, he'd be like, God damn, you look so powerful, you just overpulled it.
Okay.
Like, basically like convincing me like everything was okay, everything was good. You make this small little change here and you're going to be solid and good to go. So I remember, one time missing 2 in the back and then they calling my name. And in my head, I wanted to tell coach like, hey, let's drop the opener. But coach, I'm not going to say that because then he knows that I'm not confident. So I'm walking out there and I'm thinking, okay, like if he's keeping this opener on here, he knows I can hit it. And so like, that would be like, okay, let's go out there and hit it. And then I would go out there and hit it. And, I was very fortunate. There was about a 4-year period where I went 5 for 6 or 6 for 6 at every major national and international competition. So that helped build my confidence by a ton. And I technically only, quote unquote, bombed out from a competition once in my life. I had to withdraw from one because I tore a hamstring after the snatch. And then I had to withdraw from one. It was late. And I bombed out from one, which was late in my career. And I was already starting to come down on the decline in 2012. So, yeah, those would be the instances that I could think of.
Okay. So like all of the world championships that you were at, did you ever feel like you were affected from traveling and just being in a different country with maybe a different diet? And how did you kind of cope with those changes for maybe athletes that need to travel to different competitions around the United States or to other countries?
I can't say the travel really got to me that much on the world teams. But I was very disciplined. So I would bring all my own food for the most part. I would bring a rice cooker. I would bring rice. I would bring beans and split peas and all these dried food and Tabasco. And bagels. I remember I brought a lot of bagels and protein bars. And I would make a lot of times my own food, especially if it was a place that I didn't feel comfortable eating. And I knew that the food was super different. So the diet didn't really affect me. As far as the travel and competing on a different time zone never really affected me. I guess just mentally I would prepare myself for that and know what I was getting into. There would be a couple of days where we would actually train at those times, like the last week of training, the deload week going in, we would train at those times. So my body would kind of adjust to those new times that I would need. But again, it goes back to just that ritualistic nature. I would land in the country, and when we would go to our practices, because we'd get there, a week or so early, I would do everything the same at those gyms as I would normally. I'd put my shoes on the same way, put my socks on, approach the chalk box the same way, almost zoning out to pretend like I was at my own gym. And it didn't affect me really at all for any of that.
Yeah, it sounds like one of the underlying themes of your success is just control, like controlling as much as you possibly can so that it's not left up to anyone else to whether you succeed or not.
Yeah, it's just a lot went with discipline because another thing is we would go to these world championships and we'd get there a couple days, a week before, and all the people that are there with me, I'm watching them work out. And they're doing like 95% of their best. Mm-hmm. And it's like, 3 or 4 days before, and Chad Vaughn's got, 90% on the bar doing to me, what a kind of heavy clean and jerk. And I worked up to, I think, 60% that day. And I go up to him thinking that maybe Hatch doesn't know what he's doing. I said, Chad, I was like, why do you go so heavy, like this close to the meet? He's like, no, here's the thing, man. He's like, I wish I can go as heavy as you go, but mentally I can't do it. He's like, mentally, if I don't hit this 90% on this soil, I don't feel like I'm prepared. He's like, but I know this isn't what I should be doing. This should be a deload for me. I should be going this heavy. But he's like, mentally, I need to get those reps in. And it turns out I started talking to a lot of my other competitors on the team with me, and they all said the same thing. I need that. I just need that one workout mentally over this certain percentage so that I know I'm ready. And then I just had the discipline to where Coach Hatch knew I was ready, and I just keep following these percentages, and I will be ready. But again, that goes back to being a 12-year-old, like walking, blindly for this man to where I would die for him, to where I trusted and believed in 100% of the process. I didn't have to doubt a single part of the process.
That's incredible. So, do you have any competitors, American competitors, that maybe you really enjoyed competing against? Does anyone stick out in your career?
One is a guy named Lance Fry. We made a couple of junior world teams together. He was an unbelievable athlete. I watched him clean and jerk 190 as a 77
Jeez.
at a local meet one time. Just unbelievable athlete. But so going through my junior career with him, we were in the same weight class and we made all the same world teams. So we kind of pushed each other back and forth through those junior days, pushing each other to get to that higher level. Chad Vaughn, definitely. We made a bunch of world teams together in the same weight class. And also Kendrick Ferris, we made a bunch of world teams in the same weight class. So just really getting the bond with them. Even though they're your competitor, you're still cheering them on. You wanted to make the world team with Kendrick, with Chad, because like you already knew them and trusted them and already traveled with them and liked them and wanted to see them succeed. I was good friends with a guy named Jeff Whitmer, who made a few teams with us. We're still tight friends today. Casey Bergner, I looked up to him a lot in the way he trained and his ideology of training. Those are the most memorable ones.
Now, do you have any? Were there any international athletes that you really enjoyed watching or competing against?
Not necessarily in particular. I always really enjoyed the Colombian lifters. They always intrigued me, and we're currently actually helping out one of the Colombian lifters, Luis Mosquera. He's a bronze medalist from this past Olympics in the 69 class, and I fell in love with the Colombians back when I was still competing, and got to be really good friends with their whole team, and still great friends with their team. And so I particularly liked them a lot because they were drug-free and they were able to compete at an extremely high level against these other world champions. And so that's why I was kind of drawn to them mostly.
Okay. And the kind of last question before we wrap up here, as far as longevity and just staying healthy throughout your weightlifting career, do you feel like there were any there was anything in particular that helped you last as long as you did? Because you see competitors come and go. Maybe they're at the top for a couple years and then they kind of just recede into the darkness. So you had a really long career at a really high level. Could you attribute anything to that?
First of all, it goes back to the foundation strength that we started with, right? Mm-hmm. I told you I front squatted 230 for a triple. The most I ever cleaned was 200 kilos. Mm-hmm. So it's just like I was not going to get hurt or injured ever from a squat on the clean, right? Mm-hmm. So first of all, I was extremely blessed to only have two somewhat major injuries. One was I blew out my wrist one time when I was younger on a clean, and the other one, a slight tear in my hamstring at one of the nationals. But if you look at it from the lifespan of my career for 17 years, I was relatively extremely healthy, and I walked away extremely healthy. No knee problems, no back issues, nothing like that. I attribute that to the foundation that Coach Hatch did with us by limiting those max attempts for singles until we were 15, 16 years old, and still at that, limiting them severely is what built that for me. Other than that, I didn't necessarily enjoy competing. I felt like it was part of the process. I truly enjoyed the gym. Mm-hmm. And the memories I made with those guys at the gym and showing up every day at the gym and bullshitting with those guys and just pushing each other on a day-to-day, and then watching them succeed and watching them grow up in a sport. That's what kept me motivated was the gym. And so even when I retired, that's actually how I got started in the coaching. I retired in 2012, and I still kept showing up at the gym every day at the same time. And I would help Coach Hatch coach. I would maybe move around a little bit, do a little bit of weightlifting. But like finally Coach Hatch pulls me in the office and he said, Matt, he's like, why do you keep showing up here? And I said, Coach, I don't know anything different. since I was 12 years old, I knew from the hours of 3 and 6:30, I'm supposed to be at this gym. And if I'm not here, I don't know where else I would be. And that's where I wanted to be. That was my happy and safe place. He told me that day, Matt, get the hell out of my gym and don't ever walk back in here again until you've made it as a coach. Because if you want to be a coach, you need to prove it to me that you're going to make it as a coach. He's like, I'm not going to give you a barbell. I'm not going to give you anything. He's like, go out there on your own and build it. Because right now you're just waiting for me to die. You're waiting for me to pass on, and then you're going to take over the Gayle Hatch name. He said, if you want to take over the Gayle Hatch name, go out there and build it on your own. Prove to me that you can build it from scratch. Then when it is time for me to go, I will give you the Gayle Hatch name and everything that goes along with it. So I went home and cried because I honestly didn't know what to do. And I said, all right, so I can't go to the same place I've been going 17 years. And now I got to open my own gym, and I have absolutely no money. So I literally Googled what was the closest CrossFit gym to my house. I went and knocked on the guy's door and said, hey, would you mind if I started coaching a kid or two in the corner? Like, I'll come at off hours, this, that, or the other. We'll work out a deal, this, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, yeah. And so since then, it's been a blessing in disguise, you know, Hatch telling me that, because Hatch is still around. Hatch is still coaching. You know, I'd still be waiting there, right? But now I have a gym with 12 platforms and building my own athletes and now a successful online business where I coach CrossFitters through the internet. None of that would have came if I was still waiting there at Hatch's. So he's always had a plan for me throughout my whole career, and that included the end of my career. So he knew what he was doing the whole time. And so, you know, that's what really pushed me. Even after I retired, he was still teaching me life lessons about, you know, how to be a man and build something, you know?
Yeah, that's really powerful. And for myself, not knowing a lot about Gayle, you kind of do a great job of showing how respectful he is as a person and how much he influences the people that he coaches and helps out. And so I'm really interested in now reading some stuff that he's put out and checking more into that. So I thank you, Matt, for that.
Sure.
And then now the last section, this is kind of just like questions I ask everyone that comes on. One question for you would be, what was the most difficult aspect of the training process?
Understanding that there are more bad days than good days. Mm-hmm. To walk in the gym and not be able to hit 90% that day or 85%, and it feels like a ton of bricks. Mm-hmm. And for you to be able to walk in the gym the next day and completely put that out of your mind and pretend like it never happened and still go for 100% the next day. And in the end, realize that there are much, much more bad days than good days, right? Where the weights feel heavy, you don't feel on point. But that one good day makes up for all those bad days. That one day you walk in the gym and hit those PRs, or you went 6 for 6 at that meet and made that team. I instantly forget about all those bad days. And in all honesty, I look back at those bad days and say, hell yeah, I'm glad I had those days, because that made this so much more special to me, those good days, right? When you get those PRs, right?
Did you ever find it difficult to kind of let go of a training session after you left the gym, or did you have an ability to kind of just push it to the side and just say, hey, we train tomorrow, we'll get back at it after that?
Yeah, I was blessed where it never really affected me that much, and that came just through the Gayle Hatch discipline. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't allow that. He wouldn't allow you to come back and bring that into the gym the next day. It was just a discipline, that knowing that I trusted the system, and he instilled that in our head that it was okay to have those bad days. He, as he would say, you give me 100% every day. He's like, that might only be 80 or 90%, but as long as it's 100% of what you had, he's like, then I'm happy with you. So I just knew I gave him 100% every day. And if it wasn't what we wanted that day, it didn't matter, because it was 100% of what I had.
Okay, awesome. And so the next question, Besides the physical improvement of training, do you think it would be useful for everyone to strength train? And what has weightlifting or strength training kind of done for you?
Oh yeah, I mean, without a doubt, strength training is very important for any and everybody. Do I think everybody needs to do the Olympic lifts? Not necessarily, but if you want to be an explosive athlete, then yes, you should be doing some variation of the Olympic lifts. It's just good for longevity of life, but more importantly, setting up a routine for life, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't ever get in the habit of working out, you'll never get in the habit of it, right? So like, I don't care if you're doing CrossFit or spin classes or whatever you choose, Olympic weightlifting or powerlifting. As long as you're motivated to go do something every day and be physically active, that's going to add years to your life. So not necessarily just be weightlifting, but to be active whenever you enjoy, that keeps you on a routine, because this has to be a routine that you plan to keep or keep some kind of routine until you're 80, 90 years old, right? Because it can't just be something that you do once in your life. But if you don't ever start or get in that habit, you'll never start. How many 40, 50-year-old people out there keep saying, I need to go to the gym, or I signed up for my gym membership, but I don't ever use it, right? Because maybe they never got into that, that cycle of being in that routine.
Okay. Yeah, and not only does it increase your lifespan, but it helps increase the quality and makes it so much more enjoyable.
For sure. Yeah, I want to be able to pick up my grandkids and great grandkids, later in life.
Right. So the next question is kind of a little more focused on what you think was the worst mistake you've made as an athlete, if you feel like you made one.
Mistake I made as an athlete. Yeah, see, that's tough because I literally go through with no regrets. Yeah. So even though I made mistakes, I don't regret any of them. That all taught me a lesson. There's mistakes that I made where Coach Hatch found out that I was, drinking underage, and he gave me bucket eights, and it was, and I wouldn't have taken it any other way because that taught me a discipline, right? Mm-hmm. So to make personal mistakes, I can't say any because I definitely made some mistakes, but everything was for a reason as far as in the end outcome, so no, that'd be tough for me to answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that answer in and of itself shows why you were so successful. Is even the mistakes you're able to turn into a positive and pull something that is really impactful from it. So the last question before we kind of get into just kind of plugging your site and your coaching and all that is, what is one thing that people can do each day to better their lives?
I'm going to go back to the ritual. Find that ritual that makes you a better person, whether it be journaling every morning or listening to Headspace every morning or setting your alarm clock and doing 10 minutes of yoga every morning, mm-hmm. or, having that family dinner every night with your family. That's ritualistic, or, like that, those things keep your head in a good place. And it's a routine that carries you on to be a more successful person. So find a routine that you enjoy, and that's a routine that makes you be a better successful person, no matter what it is. And then that's what I would pick.
Okay. Matt, I really want to thank you for coming on and providing the quality information that you did as a high-level athlete, high-level coach, high-level businessman. Now, as far as where the listeners can find you, maybe you can plug the site for Brute Strength and your gym and all that.
For sure. Yep, I got an online training company that I'm a part owner in. It's called Brute Strength. It's brutestrengthtraining.com. On there, we have a bunch of different programs. We have one for Olympic weightlifting, but most of them are geared towards CrossFitters wanting to get better at Olympic weightlifting, or we have one that's purely for gymnastics if you want to get better at gymnastics. We also have like a compete program and a games prep program, which includes the Olympic weightlifting, the gymnastics, all the endurance work by one of our coaches, Chris Henshaw, and that's all encompassing programming for your CrossFit. And then we also have a program called Brute Body, which is a body transformation program, which is actually our best seller. So it's a body transformation program, but it's set with the ideals of CrossFit in mind. So you're doing some CrossFit workouts, but you're also doing some bodybuilding. You're doing a lot of Olympic weightlifting, a lot of strength and conditioning based bias. For those that want to look like they're at the CrossFit Games, but don't want to train 4 to 5 hours a day like those guys train, right? So it's a pure body transformation program for those that enjoy CrossFit but don't want to compete in CrossFit. BruteStrengthTraining.com is our website. You can follow us on Instagram at Brute_strength. And my personal Instagram is Bruce Barbell, where I mostly post my kids from my gym, lifting and competing.
Okay, awesome, Matt. And I want to thank you one last time, and I want to thank everyone for listening. I mean, who wouldn't want to work under or get coached by a multiple-time world champion or world championship competitor? So I appreciate it, Matt. Thank you again, and I hope you guys enjoyed the episode of this podcast.